Hi, it's Kevin Fleming from Grupo Mariana. Welcome to the One Country Away Challenge. Today is day 4. You've been following along, watching replays, coming to us live every single day. The purpose of this challenge and the reason why you're watching it is because you have an interest in buying real estate overseas, and or you might have already done so. Being that I'm an expert in real estate development for the last 20 years in Nicaragua, I'm going to share with you my experience today as it relates to the topic, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. Now, as a recap, for those of you who just seen this for the first time, this is what you have missed. And at the conclusion of today's presentation, when you watch it to the end, I highly suggest you go over to the YouTube channel, Playa, Mariana, Nicaragua, and watch the replays, okay? Because you're going to learn a lot. But as a summary, in day 1, we started off by trying to quickly address the number one factor that I've seen in 20 years and thousands of people that have been around the world is the problem with information overwhelm. Okay. The drowning in information where you're literally paralyzed and you can't make a decision. So the core thought for day 1 was it is not more information that you need to make a decision. It's rather less information to make a better decision and applying a filter to what you're looking at. And that filter comprises of a number of criteria of what is important to you, whether it's a paved road, non-paved road, hospital, school, whatever it might be that are your deal breakers. So you stay involved and want to learn more. Then we moved into day 2. Day 2 was now that you have your filter and you understand and you start putting together your criteria, we want to test it, right? We want to pressure test that. And what I was trying to relay in day 2 was the thought of safety and comfort and familiarity. Those are traps, okay? What you think you're going to be comfortable with is not actually safety. And what you think is safety is not something that is going to help you in the long term unless you measure what safety means. And the idea there was safety means structure, okay? Structural integrity of the project and the systems and the government and the laws that are in place. And the idea was don't so much worry about what's going to happen in the future because you never know. Crap is always going to happen. What's really important when you're looking at a project or a country, look at what's happened in the past, how that situation was dealt with, okay? And that will give you a better sense of things that happen into the future, what you can predictably expect for that government, for that administration, or for that leader, or for the project, or for the developer to do and make sure that things can continue and move forward because resilience is the name of the game. Then in day 3, okay, we took you from like 100 countries down to 3, maybe down to 1. We told you how to, what the structure was that was important. Now, day 3 starts to deal with the objections that I hear the most. And the number one objection is you might take all the time in the world and do all the research and all the due diligence, but at the end of the day, you're going to come to a point in which you have to have a conversation with your significant other. More than likely, 95% of the sales that we've made, there is a significant other in the game. And this is where the problems arise. Okay. It's a hard no. Okay. You don't want to be shot down by, your best friend. And the reason for that, without you having to go watch the entire replay, although you're going to gain a lot of knowledge from that, is you are too busy trying to convince, sell, manipulate your wife into agreeing, or husband, or they, into agreeing with you. And that's the wrong way to go about it because the number one concern, the fear, the problem is the other person simply doesn't feel safe. And you need to start thinking in terms and relativity to making that person feel more protective. All right. So it's not more influence you need. It's not more persuasion. It's not a cheaper price. I mean, all that stuff could work, but it's not the most important thing because even in the night that you might get that agreement, the lingering thought in the background of questions not being answered is going to cause a problem. So now what we do is we go forward. So when you have all the information that is evidence-based, not narratives-based, narratives meaning headlines, hype, things you see in the headlines that is going to convince, or you're going to show someone, or look at the publication that the country just received. I mean, that stuff is all good, but there are some underlying factors that you want to know. And so that is day 4. So day 1, 2, and 3 is about creating the base and the foundation. And for those of you watching the video today, you're here because you're interested in buying real estate. So we're going to get more into the focus of what that means. All right. And I have about 5 different topics that I want to cover. And in a second, I'm going to start right away. But I want to ask everybody a question in the chat. Are you ready to have some fun? If you're on Zoom, hit yes, because we're going to have some fun today. I'm going to share some stories with you because the best way to explain due diligence is what I've done myself personally. And then you could take that and apply that to whatever property or project that you're looking at, and it will help you. And today's not so much about checklists, more than understanding the order of things and how it comes to play and one builds upon the other. Does that make sense? Because it makes sense to me. So before I get started, let me tell you a story of how this all started for me. For those of you just tuning in for the first time, or for my audience on TikTok listening in, hi everybody, thank you for joining. My name is Kevin Fleming, and a long time ago, this whole entire story, this whole Nicaraguan thing for me is simply a Nicaraguan love story. I come from and hail from Canada. I grew up a number of years in Montreal and Edmonton, Alberta. I got away from the cold, then into chilly, dreary gray Vancouver, British Columbia. I was there for 13 years in a corporate career doing amazing, love my job. So this isn't a story of like, I hated this and I started that, made $1 million, and you can follow me too. That's not what this is. But I met this woman this one evening and it changed my life. And the minute I met her, about 2 minutes after I saw her, I gathered up enough courage. And she looked kind of Latin or exotic, and I like that. And so she looked Spanish to me. So I said, what the heck? I'll just go up to her and say, hola, ¿cómo estás? And she responded positively, but it wasn't more than 5 or 10 minutes. I really mean, you can ask her. She was telling me that she's Nicaraguan and she's moving back to Nicaragua. She's finishing her last year in school. And she basically, with it being nice, because she's nice, Nicaraguans are very nice. They're not going to say exactly what they're thinking. I knew what it meant was I'm not interested in meeting any guys, not some Canadian guy for sure that doesn't speak Spanish. I'm going back home to my home country. See you later. But that didn't stop me. And my mind was immediately, crazy people aren't scared of anything. Tell me more about Nicaragua. So I knew in about almost right away, I fell in love that night, not only with Maria, but with Nicaragua, because Nicaragua is an amazing place. It sounded like this fantastic place to go to. So this was August 2003. That's how far the story goes back, almost 22 years. And it was January 2004, I asked her to marry me. And November 12th, I was here in Nicaragua, married. I arrived on the 4th, and it was hot. My first time in Nicaragua. I'd never been here before. I never traveled to Mexico. I just gave it all up. No friends, no family, no money. Okay. Came to Nicaragua and got married here. And it was great. And it was about a month after our honeymoon here in Nicaragua that we returned for Christmas. And that's when all the story starts, because after I got married, after Christmas, my wife, I told her, I said, listen, honey, if we're going to go look for land, there's no way we're going to find land sitting at home in Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'll keep working. Okay. And you go back to Nicaragua and start looking for land. And so that's what she did. And she left in the first week of January and never came home. And I came forward to visit her on a number of visits while she was looking at property until we bought our first property. Now, that leads us into the story, which I'm going to share with you, of more due diligence and factors, because so much stuff happened to us that you could write a book. Some people say make a movie. Okay. But I'm going to share a lot of it here today. And so the premise is, in this One Country Way challenge, I want to share with you what no real estate developer or real estate agent wants you to know, or they might not know themselves to really tell you, which could be a problem in itself. Now, are you guys ready to continue? Do you want to hear more? When you're in the chat, give me a yes. If you have a question along the way, I should deal with that right now. Questions I will look at the end of the presentation, time providing. Okay, we're going to go about an hour today. And before we get going, I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. There's nothing here for sale. Okay, it's day 4 of a challenge. If you've been to a challenge before, day 4 is a day where they try and sell you something. All right, they're going to teach you something and try and sell you something, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But in these 5 days, I have nothing for you to sell. Now, I am a real estate developer. I do have 923 acres of beachfront property that were under development, and we're going to tell you more about that, but there's nothing for sale today. So just relax, sit back, enjoy the information. Uh, like what you hear, use what you hear, and what you don't, simply disregard the rest. Okay. And then it doesn't have to be complicated for you. So let's just begin. Now, as I was preparing for this day, I wanted to try and summarize what this day was going to be about. And I could tell you this whole day is going to be about getting in early. I said getting in when? Getting in early. Because everybody hears, I heard this morning from a friend, buy low, sell high. Okay. But there's all kinds of problems that come with that. But getting in early as for real estate is really important because the money that you're going to make or the returns you think you're going to have, providing that real estate return is the reason you're purchasing, because not everybody buys for return on the real estate. They want to use the asset. It's not just about making money. It could be about parking money or buying a retirement property. But the money in real estate is made, what do you think? When you sell or when you buy? If you look down below in the chat, okay, or you're watching the replay, let me know when you think money is made in real estate. When you buy it or when you sell it. The answer is the money in real estate is made when you buy it. So getting in early is really important. And so we're going to go forward today and I'm going to talk about, now that you know that getting in early is the most important factor to make money when purchasing real estate abroad, how do you minimize risk? Because I'm all about risk, minimizing risk, and communicating to you that risk exists in everything. There's no such thing as no risk. So when you see anything that says guarantee, no risk, run. That's a red flag that you should pay attention to right away. And you should be very cautious because there's risk in everything. But there are ways to mitigate that risk. And that's what we're going to talk about today for you to understand. So the first point we should get into is safety. Now, we touched upon a little bit this yesterday, but it's just as important today. Safety as it relates to real estate right now and for this presentation has nothing to do with violent crime, getting robbed, what are statistics. Just park that in the garage and get that out of your mind. Today, safety has to do with how that filter that you're applying and the criteria that you're looking at, all right? That all depends upon the structure that has been created that's going to give you the safety. So safety is not comfort. Safety is not familiarity. Safety is structure. And this is a really key point for you to understand. So I said, what is safety? It's really important. You might want to write this down. Safety is structure. So let me go deeper into what structure is and safety so you can pull it all together. When you're looking at a property to buy to get in early, you want to know, and you might not know, because the only thing that people give you are potentially checklists and steps to buy. All right. There's many books on Amazon. You can read many articles, but going behind the scenes, very few people will tell you what creates that structure, which turns into layers that you want to pay attention to. And since we're dealing with due diligence today, some of this stuff might sound technical. It's kind of a technical day. So you're going to have to bear with me. You're going to have to put on your mental track shoes, all right, and just keep up. And don't worry that if you don't understand something, when you go back and watch the replay, you'll pick it up. And I'm sure this is going to happen to you. So consider this. You're going to hear something that's going to be new to you, or it might apply to you because it happened to you and you're thinking about how you have to deal with this situation. And your mind is going to wander off. Okay. You're not going to be with me. You're not going to hear what I'm saying. And you're going to miss a lot of what comes next when you're off in la la land. So that's okay. When you come back and you realize you're in a trance and I pulled you out of your trance, okay, that's when I say, pay attention to my words. That's because I know that you've gone off trying to apply the filter and the things that I'm saying to what it is that you're learning. So let's go back to safety and structure is this. When you start looking at properties that you want to get involved in, what it really means getting in early is not after you see something built. Okay, that makes no sense, right? I mean, it's already built. So obviously you're not early, you're late. And when you're late, that means that the proof you're looking for, okay, that's gone. All right, it's too late. And getting in late might also mean the inventory that you're looking to get, the particular product in its location, is gone. Getting in when things are finished, there's a whole bunch of other problems that you need to be aware of for that. And that could be a whole entire episode in itself. But let's just today focus on getting in early and what that means. In the real estate world, it's really referred to two things. Okay. Buying pre-construction. You might have heard of that. Anyone who's heard of buying pre-construction in the chat or on TikTok, say yes if you know what pre-construction is. So I know my audience and who I'm talking to today. But also, I learned the other technical term for getting in early is buying off plan, which is more of a UK European set. So in North America, a lot of people say pre-construction. In the UK and Europe, they say off plan. So, but they both mean the same thing. So today we're talking about off plan because the best deals that you're going to find are in these projects that you can get in early off plan. All right, which means it's not built yet. You can't see what it is that you're going to buy outside of a rendering. And you might even get involved so early, the rendering isn't even created or the floor plan. It's just a concept of what's going to be there. And that's important because the earlier you get, the more risk you're going to take, and understanding factors that will mitigate that risk will help out a lot. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Because I'm so excited. Due diligence, I'm a nerd, I'm a geek. The whole premise of being a developer in Nicaragua for me dates back to when I got started. And it was the concept and the idea that what I wanted to do was take the North American mindset, the rules, the regulations, the securities, the disclosure, and I wanted to bring that to Nicaragua because here in the country at that time in 2006, when we started our project Playa Mariana outside of Masachapa, only an hour from Managua, it was a huge project, 923 acres and 2 kilometers of beachfront. How do we organize all of this? So it was my belief that putting into place the right title and the title insurance and the horizontal property regimes and the disclosure, the securities, all that was important to create a good model and a base for due diligence for North American buyers, which are primarily the audience of people who are purchasing real estate in foreign countries. All right. I'm sure most of the projects that you talk to or you're doing due diligence, the buyers within the projects are probably 80% foreigners and 20% locals. And that's primarily because of the price. Now, so that was my idea. So everything I've done over the years has taken 3 to 5 times longer, cost probably 5 to 10 times more. But the result is a model that you can follow to keep in the back of your mind to apply as a benchmark to any project, anywhere, anytime. Okay. Did everybody understand that? Because it's really, really important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So now you know what off plan is. Now, what are the stages of buying pre-construction, due diligence? What does that mean? You know, when people get involved with our project, I have this book. It's called this due diligence book. And this is probably a good time to introduce it. Most of the projects that you're going to get involved in, they have been doing work, spending money on legal, trying to get permits. They might have title insurance. They could have letters of recommendations from the government, but every developer will be proud of it, hang the diplomas on their wall or the site trailer or create all of the above and a book like this. All right. And the start of your due diligence in any project would be to ask the developer to send you their due diligence. Okay. So you can see what permits they have and where they are. Now, some of that is likely not going to make any sense for you. So I want to warn you that the concept of today is not for you to understand and remember everything, okay, because there's a lot to remember. But I'm going to move forward. I want to talk about 3 specific things, maybe 4, 5 if we have time, that were important to me and should be important to you. And this comes from selling properties over the last 20 years to over 60 people. And the things that I'm going to share with you today are not any questions any buyer has asked me. And they're the most important questions. And you're going to want to know this. Does that make sense? Would you want to know what the most important questions are in buying real estate abroad that 66 people didn't ask, but just gave me over $10 million and said, hey, Kevin, I like it. Here's my money. Go do what you're doing. All right. That's what I'm going to share with you right now. So the first thing in those layers, all right. Now I'm going to tell you what the 3 layers are. They're going to go through the important questions. The layers are title and permits. Okay. That's layer number 1. All right. Can anyone guess what layer number 2 is? Okay. That's narratives, and infrastructure and narratives is layers number 2. Okay. And layer number 3 is the phasing strategy of the development. Understanding that, because nobody builds these massive mega projects all at once. So many of these projects, the phasing strategy, the capital flow, the ability to attract more investors really is dependent on what has happened before. So it stands to reason that, for example, a project like mine that sold over 60 properties, it's something you might want to take a look at because other people are looking at it, and you don't want to miss out. Other projects that have been on the market for 20 years and maybe they haven't sold anything and they got an abundance of inventory, you might be asking a question like, what's up here? What's going on, right? You want to dig a little bit deeper. So let's start with title today. All right. Now, I'm not going to, I don't come to you from a point of view that I know every single title in every single country and what it's called. Okay. But I will talk about Nicaragua today and the importance of different titles because they are pretty common throughout the regions, at least in Latin America, and I'm sure in other countries, depending upon whether you're in Southeast Asia or the Philippines or somewhere in Spain, they have their own sets of titles. Okay, so that's part of your due diligence in the research that you do. We're looking for your criteria. So these are criteria factors. All right. Now, not all titles are created equal, and I'll explain that to you. In Nicaragua today, there's 5. How many? How many titles? 5 different types of titles. Now, a person might suggest that the most valuable title is the one that you can own in your own name or your own company name. And I would say that's true. Okay. And that's normally called an escritura público. Okay. And maybe called something different wherever you're going. But let's just, for today in English, refer to a freehold title because our audience generally is principally North American. And that's generally how titles are referred to back home. So a valuable title is a freehold title. Now, from a due diligence standpoint of view, the best due diligence advice I can give you from title standpoint of view is to go back 30 years. And so, for example, our particular property goes back 120 years. I was the owner for the last 20. Now, that's a freehold title. Another type of title that you might run across in different nations is called an agrarian title. And it's somewhat like what it sounds. It's a title for agricultural. That was the primary reason for the title created. So, for example, in Nicaragua back in the 80s, there was a period of time where properties were confiscated from individuals and given to these agrarian co-ops to work the land. And so those titles became agrarian titles. Now, you see the problem there, right? You see the problem with that? I said the properties were taken, confiscated, and given. So what happens to the person who the land was taken from? Well, for a period of time, you know, they were somewhat out of luck. But over time, an office was created, and this may be the same in other countries, whereby compensation was given to the owners of which the land was expropriated from. Now, what happens is, and this is really important. Again, we're going to get into details and a little bit complicated today, but that's okay. I know you guys can keep up and pay attention. An agrarian title doesn't mean it's just pure and clean. Remember, I said they gave it to a cooperative. So many times you'll find these huge titles of property, and they might have 20 to 50 names on it because they've put on the title the names of everybody in the cooperative, on the one title, okay, for an entire area. Now, you can see the problem in that. But what happens to further complicate matters is all those people are now living on the land in their own little spots, and they've set up their own locations to work the land, and they'll claim that parcel as their own, but there's no division. There's no lot survey that says Senor A or Senor B or Senorita C or Senora D has this exact piece. And that exact piece would refer to a divided agrarian title. And the opposite would be an undivided agrarian title. So you can see when you're going and looking for land, and title is the first thing that's the most important thing for you to ask to see a copy of the deed or meet the attorney of the developer that is selling you property to see the original deed so you can feel confident that, well, okay, I won't spoil it, but you can feel confident that the person selling you land actually has their name on the deed, unless you're a real estate agent. That's happened many a times. So when you see an agrarian deed, at least in Nicaragua, it should send up a flag. It's like, is it divided or is it undivided? And then you need to find out, even if it's divided, is it registered or not registered? So anyway, it could get complicated, but that's just to show you that there are freehold titles, you own your own name. There are agrarian titles, where titles born from confiscation. A third type of title, one that I have purchased in the past, is generally referred to around here as leased land or maybe concession. Okay, you're buying that 99-year lease. And I spent $350,000 on a house at the beach in Masachapa, another $100,000 in renovations. You should not feel uncomfortable with investing in leased land or making improvements to the land for a house that's on there, because the municipalities do enforce and regulate. They're generally good titles to buy, except you never own it. You just have the lease to the land. So you can see how the freehold title is very valuable, the agrarian title less valuable, more concerns, and the lease land, well, you never really own it in your own name, so it'll never be as valuable as maybe not even the agrarian title and definitely not the freehold title, but it doesn't make it a bad title. Then you have something called possession. I say there's a Spanish word I'm losing right now, possession rights to a title. That might sound familiar to you, like a squatter's law. And in different countries, when individuals have been on land, they marked the land clearly, no one's complained or started any legal action to make a claim on the land. Well, they might have rights to that land and get possession of it, but it doesn't mean they have title yet. They can get title and possession title. It's a process and you got to go through the courts, but that's kind of like possession title as people refer to it. Even though they might not have the title, they have possession of the land. So it could be a big fight there. So you want to watch out for that. And the last title in Nicaragua is communal titles. All right. The ones from that go back way back when. And communal titles are not generally titles that can be purchased. All right. They're usually more like transferred down from the bloodline, so to speak. So that's 5 titles, right? What did I say? You have freehold, agrarian, leased land concession, possession, and communal. 5 different types of titles. And they'll all have different values, and the freehold title being the most. Now, I tell you this because title is the beginning of everything. And in all my years in Nicaragua, not one client has ever asked to see my title to see if I am actually the owner of the property. And so I highly suggest whoever you buy property from, like, look to see that the person who's selling it to you, if they claim to be the owner, is actually on the title and or is part of the company that might own the title as a shareholder. Understanding that legal structure of what you're buying into, really, really important. Does that make sense? Can you see how that can work for you and how powerful that is? And that might protect you from a situation that can get bad fast before you even get started. All right. And you can do this research on your own. You don't need a lawyer yet to do all this research. You just need some basic information so you can visually see who's seeing your land, that they're the owner. That doesn't mean everything's perfect. We're going to get into that, but at least it's a start. Now, when you get past the title part, all right, sticking with layer 1, we're still at layer 1 right now, okay? Title, the next part is the permits and insurance. When you're purchasing title across these Latin American countries or wherever you are in the world, there are different title insurance carriers that you may want to look at, which will insure your property for things that have happened in the past that might have been missed, okay, that cause problems and defects to your title. It might not guarantee so much what might change or happen in the future. Okay, that's another story. But at least if something was missed in the research or in your due diligence that comes back to haunt you, the title insurance will be there to protect you. At least it should be. So, for example, Here's a story. You guys ready for a story? I say at least protect you, but sometimes it doesn't. And so I'm going to tell you things that you might not always hear. When my wife and I got involved in real estate in Nicaragua, we bought our first piece of land. It was approximately a kilometer and a half long in beach. It was 17 acres. It was on an island peninsula in the central northern coast of Nicaragua. And the person who we were buying it from had owned it for 10 years. That was what was represented to us. They had a claim to the property. They had plans for a development that they were already building. They had these great presidential decrees. Everything looked great. So we were interested in buying the land. It was somewhere close to $1 million, and my wife negotiated a deal that we could buy the property over time. So naturally, what do you think the first thing is that we're going to do? We want to we want to know that the property title is good. So what lawyer do we hire? Well, from a North American standpoint of view, we're not buying the property for us. We're buying the property to create a master plan. And then the master plan will be divided into lots, and we're going to sell them to North American clients who are going to want title insurance. That's right. So getting title insurance was really important. So we went to the title insurance carrier at the time. That was First American Title Insurance. And we're like, who do you like for attorneys to do the research on the title that's going to give you an opinion for you to give a policy? Because there's no sense us using a lawyer that you don't like or you don't approve, and then you got to go do the work all again, and it takes even longer. So they told us. So we started our title opinion, which generally takes a month to 2 months, depending upon how complicated the property. It might take 2 to 4 months. It depends how large it is and how far back you want to go. So we did that. Okay. And the title came out great. All that stuff that the owner presented to us, no problem. Looked amazing. Title insurance company got a hold of it. They reviewed it. Fantastic. Check mark. You get a good title. You can get title insurance. That was the green light to buy. So we made our first purchase. We had to get some business associates, but we combined our money and we bought, almost 5.5 acres of land. It was 3 manzanas for, a couple $100,000. It was cheap at the time. And we were in business. Okay. So I'll fast forward after selling. Well, let me go back a second. From a marketing standpoint of view, we didn't have a client database or list. So naturally, the next thing that was important for me was how do we put in place distribution to sell these properties to individuals in North America? So we approached at the time an organization called International Living. All right. They've been around for like 30 years. Great organization. If you get on with them, they send out an email to 300,000-400,000 people, and you have 500 or 600 emails that come in, and everyone's asking about your properties based upon their recommendation. But their due diligence is it's not as detailed as it could be to protect the buyer who's looking for land. The essence of their due diligence really comes down to, and not just them, most of the third-party people who are trying to teach you how to buy property overseas or might get a commission for a referral, they probably only go as far as title and title insurance. I've not seen anybody go deeper than that because it would take time and understanding, and they're usually not interested in that. It's how fast can I get out the email and how much commission can I get? So, but it works. Okay, we sold like 20 properties, but it wasn't more than 5 months later that we got a call saying somebody was claiming that we were on their land. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like our property. And so we contacted the title insurance company because that's what you do in the event of a claim. And so they started to investigate. And about 2 months later, that claim was put down that they had no validity to be there. But this is where, stuff happens in Nicaragua. No matter what you do, no matter what you do, things can happen. So, but we found out that not that they owned the property. We found out that the title that we had perhaps had a defect, and the descriptions of the title and however it was missed was located somewhere else. I'm like, oh man, that's terrible. Okay, what do we do about this? Now you have title insurance, so you don't have to spend any extra money on lawyers. The title insurance company will hire an attorney to act on their behalf, which should be acting on your behalf as a representative to go do all the research and figure it out. So the story goes deeper than that. It took about 2.5 years and $300,000 to solve it. But that's what kind of led us to the property that we're at right now that I'm going to tell you more about is the benchmark standard for due diligence in Nicaragua or any project that you're going to want to look at. Now, you see, so you can buy title. It might look good from a title opinion, get title insurance, and still have a problem. And you should be aware of that. And these problems will happen. So don't be surprised. Nothing ever goes perfect, but you hope that title and title insurance is something that you can rely upon. Now, my lesson learned in that was I remember thinking to myself, we just sold $700,000 or $800,000 worth of properties. We just bought $1 million worth of land. What am I going to do with all these people who might end up in a position where they lose their money? And this is my first project, my first real estate experience in the country. And I was like, I don't want anybody to lose money. So while we try and solve the problem that arose in mid 2006, let's go look for more land because if we can find enough beachfront and more land, then should we not be able to resolve the problem over there? We could just move the people over here. It's just another beach and it would be nice. So that's what led me to today and how we're talking and everything that came about over that and spending another $10 million to do what I'm doing today to be in front of you 20 years later after all of this. So we didn't give up. We didn't panic. We invested in solving the problem, but we didn't wait till the problem was solved. We were proactive in moving forward. And so as the story goes, because we're talking about safety, risk, getting in early, I can tell you that it is highly unlikely that you'll ever take the amount of risk that I took in purchasing our second property. All right. And I'm going to tell you about it. Now, this would be the definition of getting in early off plan. Okay. I got a call from an agent one day saying, Kevin, I know you're looking for land. I got a parcel that's for sale. The owner just gave it to me for the listing. I'm going to be listing it next week, but I know you're looking for land. Do you want to see it? And I was like, sure, let's go. Where is it? Well, it's an hour outside Managua. It's in the areas of Masachapa and Pocha. It's 550 manzanas, which is 923 acres, and has 2 kilometers of beachfront. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. Okay. And it's $4.4 million. Okay. This is June of 2006. So I would say, okay, let's go see it tomorrow. And so I go out to the property the next day to go see it. And I kind of geographically knew the area of the country was really good for water, which is important to me. And we're going to touch upon that. But when I saw it, I was like, this is amazing. This is like the best property I've ever seen in my life. I have to have it. And so I knew in 5 minutes that I was going to make an offer on the property. I didn't need to know anything else. I guess crazy people aren't scared of anything. So that night I went home to tell my wife that, hey, listen, baby, I found this property and I'm going to buy it. But to take it off the market, we're probably going to need about 4 months of time to check the title and do some surveying and make sure that the basic stuff is there, like water and no fault lines and title's good and can get title insurance. But that takes time. So, but I don't want to lose the land because, we got this problem over here and we got some people over there that we might need to move. So this is a great opportunity to act as a backup. So I told her that night, we were going to write a check for $100,000 US, non-refundable, just to have the rights to take the property off the market and put it under contract so it couldn't be sold to anybody else. This is June of 2006. All right. It gets even crazier. Okay. So she's like, okay, but how are we going to pay for it? And I was like, don't worry about that. We'll figure all that stuff out afterwards. Let's just get it under contract. So that is risk. Okay. All I'm looking at the time is a lot survey. That is it. Okay. There's not even any details lot survey. There's no grading plan of the lot survey. There's no environmental markings on the property of what is protected or not protected or sloped area or wetland, nothing. It's just literally, it was a white piece of paper that looked like someone draw a cartoon line around the perimeter of the border. That's all I had. And away I go. And that's how we started. Now, that is getting in early. That is where you get in early and your returns are 1,000%. That's what you should expect. All right. Now, when you're coming back to where you are today, looking at perhaps properties, you're buying one lot, maybe a quarter of an acre, not 923 acres. You're going to be looking inside a development where the developer is already providing or showing you a master plan. So when you look at that master plan, you should not be you should not be like, wow, that's amazing. Look at the colors, and you're in like La La Land because everything looks great. It will and it should, but that's just the start of it. You want to start to peel back the layers. Now, we talked about title, a little bit of how I got started, a bit of the title defect, but the next thing you want to look at is water. Okay, so the first one we addressed was title. Now, and then we talked about the importance of title insurance. But before I go on, can I go back a second on the title insurance? Because this is really important and it's worth repeating. When you buy property from a developer that has title insurance, it is really, really important you understand that when the conclusion of the property is transferred to you, it does not transfer to you with title insurance. The minute that property deed is completed, it separates from the master policy that's on the lands in which it's selling it to you. So when you would want to have title insurance, you're going to have to do it by yourself. You're going to have to do it how? By yourself. You're going to have to contact the title insurance company. You're going to have to send in your funds for the policy and get your own policy of title insurance specific to your lot survey and the deed that you have. Did everybody get that? Does that make sense? Because that's how it happens. All right. There's a big misconception that you're buying a land with title insurance. You're not. Now, it is important that the developer that you're buying land from have policies of title insurance. And the reason why that is not only so you think you can get title insurance also, and it should be pretty easy, but in the case of, let's say, Nicaragua, the policies that I received from First American Title Insurance and Stewart Title Guarantee, I spent $80,000 to have $8 million worth of title insurance on my lands. Those companies are no longer operating in Nicaragua and writing policies. So it is highly likely you can't get a title insurance policy on your own in Nicaragua anymore, unless there's some new carrier coming into the country that I don't know about. So knowing that the developer did their due diligence on the property, there's title insurance in place, at least at one particular point in time, a policy, or even from a second carrier, which is likely highly unlikely because I'm pretty sure I'm the only developer that has two policies of title insurance on their lands because people just don't do that. For the most part, most people have no title insurance, let alone one policy. So finding properties with two policies of title insurance or two different carriers generally means that the property's been checked 3 times, which gives you and should give you a lot of confidence, right? Does that make sense? You can see how that would be beneficial to you, right? And how you can apply that to your filter and your criteria and the structure and how projects could be tested. Now, moving forward and putting title and title insurance aside and understanding the importance of starting there, the next one is water. And that's a huge subject, but really, really important. Let me check my time. Okay, we're doing good for time. All right, now, in all these clients that I've sold and 20 years of dealing with property, no one has even asked me, do I have water on site when they're buying their land? Can you believe that? Doesn't that sound unreal? And water is so important. Now, here's what you need to know about water. A project will either have water or it won't. And also water is important and where the well is located. But let's start first with water and whether a project has it or not. Many times a project might tell you that it has water, but there are 2 important things you need to watch out for. One, and the most obvious is they're sucking their water from a river, which is not allowed in certain jurisdictions, or maybe it is, and that's okay. But, that's where the water's coming from. So who knows if that river is fresh or contaminated or how they're using the water, all right? Or what are the water levels of the river in the dry season versus the rainy season, because the levels of the river might go down, okay, and there might not be as much water. Second to that is the water that they are projecting that they're going to give you in the project, do they own it? Do they own the well in which it's coming from? Is it on the property that you're buying or within the development? Because it's not uncommon for a lot of lands in different regions of a country to have no water. And so let's say on an island, for example. So what will happen is the developers or the owners will find water somewhere in around 2 or 3 or 4 kilometers, negotiate some deal with that owner, and then get the rights to create a well or tap into the well that's there. They'll dig a trench and they'll run a pipe all the way to their development. And that's the water that you're getting. So you might not know the water quality or the solubility or, the pH levels, but that's the water that's coming, which is not a bad thing, except for one thing. The developer doesn't own it. It's just some deal and loose agreement. So what happens if that guy decides one day, like, I don't want to give you water, or that person gets into a fight with that individual and he shuts off the water, or the well itself gets damaged for whatever reason because you can't monitor it, you're not on site providing security, or the individual owner dies and the property transfers to the heirs or sold to someone else, and say, like, what's this pipe going that way? I don't want anything to do with that. And they cut off the water. Now you have no water in the development. So there is risk in purchasing land anywhere when you don't know where the water comes from. And when you do know where the water comes from, let's say it's from a river, you want to know if that's environmentally allowed. Are there permits for that? And if it's not on site, where is it coming from? And is there an agreement in place? And how strong is that agreement? And you just might want to go visit that property and see the well for yourself, meaning, are they pumping the water straight out of the well into a 2-inch pipe that's going to be running to your property? Are they also providing water to another development? Are they pumping the water from the well into the holding tanks, and the holding tanks are sending the water your way? Is it 1 tank or 4 tanks? Do they shut the water down during a certain period of time to repair? What is the water capacity per minute for that well to deliver to you so there's adequate pressure? Is it going uphill or downhill? Are there other pumps along the way that's going to keep the water pressure where you're buying from? You can see there's a lot of things to do with water that I'm sure you've never heard of any of that stuff, but all really important. So it goes without saying that the most valuable property for you to buy so far would be what? Freehold with title insurance, 2 policies better, and wells that the developer owns on the property. Now, 1 well is okay. 2 wells are great. 3 is amazing. 4 is spectacular. So the more wells, the better, providing that they are spaced apart so one is not depleting the other. Now, this particular presentation is not to get into the details of constructions of wells, but to say that the important thing here is you want to buy property, and I'd highly suggest you want to buy property in a development where the developer owns the land in which the wells are located, and most certainly has the permits to have drilled the wells and to use the wells and operate and deliver water within the development. Does that make sense? Okay. Water is really, really important. So that's enough on the water side. Now, what I want to do, because I want to respect everybody's time, I want to get into the third most important thing that I believe you just really need to know this, because it goes into after the due diligence part. This is part of the due diligence, how this plays a factor. Another thing that no one's ever asked me is, do you have a horizontal property regime? And it might be called something else in a different country, but in Nicaragua, that's what it's called. And what that is, in English terms, it could be a homeowners association, a property owner association. What are the rules, the regulations, the covenants, the restrictions? How much you're going to pay per month, and who's going to look after all this, and what do you get? What's the budget for the common areas? All that falls under a horizontal property regime. Now, this is important because the regime, when you're buying property in any development, the regime puts all these rules and regulations on the land, on the title. So when you sell the title, all those rules and regulations pass to the new owner. When there is no registered horizontal property regime on property that you're buying, what you're left with is simply the developer giving you a Word document or a PDF that says homeowner association, asking you for dues, and there's a budget in some Excel spreadsheet on the last page as an appendix. That's what you can expect. But the caution there is the difference between the registered one and the non-registered one And I'm sure you can guess. Can anybody guess? I mean, look in the chat if you can guess what that difference might be. The difference is enforceability. So important because you might be handed this HOA document, asked to pay $100 a month or $1,500 a year, not pay it. Okay. Then the developer tries to come and collect and sends you all these scary letters, but it's not enforceable. And you might say to that developer, like, I just don't want to pay anymore. Like, why should I pay? Now, don't get me wrong. You should pay because it helps the development. But what I'm saying is, you don't want to be the only one paying, right? You want some mechanism in place, and that we call that governance. Okay. So when you're looking at due diligence, all right, and now we're getting more into the due diligence part and the permits and almost ending phase one of that layer. Okay. We're not yet into narratives yet, but governance is really important in a project because it allows for the enforcement and the management to take place. Otherwise, what you might end up with is a situation whereby you might have bought into a property where there's a golf course development. And in this golf course development, the HOA is supposed to look after it. And no one's paying money into the HOA. And there's no money to look after the golf course and the maintenance and the repair and the gas to cut the grass. And so it falls into like really bad shape. And then it becomes to be a problem on the property values. And nobody wants to buy land and development in a rotting golf course that's browned. So it turns people off. So the enforcement and the collection of dues is really important. So you want to look for these properties that have a horizontal property regime. Now, when you find one, when you find one, like congratulations. I mean, it's really rare to find. On the Pacific coast of Nicaragua in 2007, I went about to put in place this property regime at a cost of well over $100,000 and took 2.5 years to do so. 2.5 years to do that without transferring one title to anybody. Because once you transfer the title before the properties are registered, it's not retroactive. Now, what does that say? I can tell you this. Development in the country of Nicaragua started back in 1997 with no matter what project you find. And this could apply to almost any country, anywhere. So, but Nicaragua specific. So between 1997, any project that you might find from 1997 to 2007, okay, actually, I can say almost up to 2010, has no horizontal property regime. And I say that, okay, because it's the truth, because no one's done it. So when you buy property in any development, let's say in Nicaragua specific, because that's where I am, there is no HOA that's enforceable on the coast of Nicaragua in any development project born from 1997 to 2007. Definitely not up to 2010, but I can't speak from 2012 onward. It is possible. But I know there are no big projects in the country that have started of any relevance that are known to have done this because it's not something that is easy to do. Because what does that mean? Think about it for a second. You might spend 1 million, 2 million, $3 million for land. You might be spending $200,000, $300,000 in operations. You're spending another $100,000 or $200,000 in marketing to attract leads. You might have a team of 30 global team members like I did with Nicholas Design and Kemper Sports Management and attracting hotel groups like Wyndham Hotel Group, Kemper Sports, Earl Swenson Associates, Land Design, all these team members. Very expensive, okay? So how do you pay for all of that? Well, most developers will sell properties. They won't wait till it's all done because they need the cash from selling the properties to keep things going and to do stuff. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, except the consequences of that action is a non-enforceable HOA or property owner association, which will create problems later on down the line. Now, I'll use my project as an example because it's basically the standard of what you're looking for in any country, and most definitely in Nicaragua. So what are those standards of enforcement? Because as long as everybody pays, you're going to get like this amazing property and it's going to be looking absolutely fantastic. And the people that come there are going to have a tremendous, great time and just be so happy because the property looks great. The roads and the sidewalks are not crumbling. The infrastructure is looked after. Doesn't that sound great? Because that's all good things, but only if someone's paying for it, the owners. Okay, so how do you collect? In a project like ours, and others, some of the collection mechanisms that you need to worry about, or not worry about if you pay your fees. But the first one is it's a very low bar. You can't enter the property. It'd be you. If you have a house, you're trying to rent it on Airbnb, your guest can't in the property. So you have complete zero access to the property. Yes, you're the owner of the title, absolutely. But you bought that title under enforceable horizontal property regime as a community. And that says that you don't get access if you don't pay. So that's like number one. I told the story yesterday. Maybe it's worth repeating. Where I live, I work in here in Nicaragua, and I live in Nicaragua, but I also live in Mexico and spend time there. But in the project where I'm living, they have this huge whiteboard at the gated entrance, and they put the unit number there and the street name, and I think the last name too. I'm pretty sure. And it's a shaming board to get people to pay. So everybody coming in and out, they can see what numbers are on the board are the ones that haven't paid. And so I don't want to do that, but we just don't let you in the property. Now, when the case comes, you can't resolve things. The next mechanism in place is a lien on your land. So you might be trying to sell your property, but you don't have any dues paid and you think you can get away with that. And if it was not an enforceable HOA under a horizontal property regime, you could, absolutely. There'd be no way for someone to collect from you when you sell your property, and no way for someone to put a lien on your property because you haven't paid. There'd be no supporting evidence or guidance for you to do that. So what happens is, in our particular case, we put a lien on your land. And so when your property sells, we're sure to get paid. And the most effective one that we have, it's a huge hammer that we don't want to use, is we actually have the right to sell your property without your signature, without your authorization, to collect our fees and our dues in the case that you haven't paid. Now, it's not something that we're going to jump to right away. We most certainly have to go through, and we'll want to go through the other steps. But as an ultimate way in which to protect the lands, maybe it sounds bad to say this, but we got to get you out of there. If you're just a delinquent person not paying, you're not enhancing the community in any way. You're causing more harm than good. So, I want you out, and certainly all the other people that are paying, they're going to want you out as well, because you not paying will lead to an example of others not paying, which will then lead to less security, which will lead to more crime and more break-ins, which will lead to more deterioration of the property, and the property values go down. So it hurts everybody. So having a real good functioning, managed horizontal property regime or property owner association or HOA that's enforceable, that is one of the most beneficial things you're going to have. So we covered three things so far, right? We're pushing on an hour. So we talked about title insurance. We talked about water. All right. And we talked about just right now the horizontal property regime. And we're already at an hour. So I really want to respect everyone's time. The key here in understanding due diligence is when you start getting into the mix of things, have the developer send you all the permits that they have and look to see what is in place for their structure. Because when you're buying off plan, all you have is the idea of what is to come, what is going to be based on the structure of what's already there. And that best starts with like asking for a brochure like this. And then when you go through it, it has all the permits of the development. Okay. You're going to want that. It's just simple due diligence. That's the basic standard. You've now learned that every country has different types of titles, some more valuable than others, and some a little bit more fragile than others. And so I might say that a good solid title will generally always be solid. A title that seems fragile or some problems at the beginning, they tend to always have those problems. So depending upon your budget or the quality of the title that you want for yourself, that's one thing, but you should look at who the market is that you're selling to, because they're going to be looking at titles as well, and they're going to want the best title that they can possibly get. Because I know I would want that. Wouldn't you want that? Of course, you want to have a good title, right? So, and then we talked about water. Water is so important. Okay. You want to make sure that wherever you buy property, that the person who's presenting the property to you actually owns the water and the wells that are on the site. Doesn't mean that if they get water elsewhere, it's good or bad, although it could be against regulations, it could be against environmental controls, but you need to find out, does it come from a river? Does it come from off-site? And what are the backups or the administration or the legal mechanisms in place that will create security for you to know that water will be there in the future? And lastly was the horizontal property regime, which is the registered enforceability of covenants, restriction, rules, and regulations on the land that are transferable and enforceable, which falls under the layer of governance. Now, I could go on for another hour with governance with architectural guidelines and a lot of other things. And I started explaining permits like municipality permits and cultural permits and Initera permits, but I'm not going to do that today. That is something for you to look into in whatever property that you're investigating, because every country is going to be a little bit different. But those three things that I covered most definitely are something that you want to pay attention to. So that covers the important things that I wanted to talk today about how to buy real estate and avoid the common mistakes that people make. And I just told you three things that 66 people who've paid over $10 million have never asked. All right. So they're important for you. Okay. Now, when you feel comfortable, I highly, again, suggest you go back and look at the first three video replays of the challenge, because it's going to guide you to this point in where we are today, right now, that you're listening to. Because today, by far, was probably one of the most important things for you to learn and to know and to understand and to apply in that filter, in the criteria that you want to look for. That's going to create the structure that's going to give you the safety. So when you buy real estate in a project that you're going to get in early, whether it's called pre-construction or off plan, you have the confidence and you've reduced the fear and the unknown and your chance of failure into the future. I'm Kevin Fleming. I'm going to sign off right now. I'm going to end it there. Thank you for watching this video to the end. And when you have additional questions, I highly encourage you to go down below in the description. Wherever you're looking, click on some of the links, reach out to us, and we'll be glad to send you our own particular due diligence report or the market reports and developments, the comparative market analysis that'll help you get an idea of how to start looking at the comparative nature of properties by average square foot, by meter, by size, by unit type, by location within a development, so you get a more comprehensive understanding of the types of products that are out there. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining and watching this video to the end. And I'm Kevin Fleming signing off from Grupo Mariana, the developer of Playa Mariana here in Nicaragua. 923 acres, 2 kilometers of beachfront, under construction right now, just about an hour outside Managua, 8 kilometers from Masachapa. You're going to want to know more about it. That's my shameless plug. So go down below, go to playamariana.com, register to get on the wait list. Our huge real estate release is coming up on February 19th, and you're not going to want to miss out. We'll see you then. Bye for now.